the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education. If you all stand, we'll be led in the pledge by our student member, Brody Zaid. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Item number 1, adoption of the agenda. It looks like we will be pulling item 8.1 and 10.1. And other than that, are there any other changes?
No other changes.
Okay. Then we move to item 2, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of December 20th, 2023, the special and regular meetings of December 14th, 2023, and the special meeting of December 8th. If there are no changes, they will stand approved as presented. And there are no public hearings, so it brings us to reports and communications.
We have a presentation.
Oh, except we probably have to do programs and presentations since Dr. Savko is ultimately prepared for that. So, Dr. Savko, Local Control Accountability Plan update.
Good evening, President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff and community. In June 2021, the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board adopted a then New Year Local Control Accountability Plan. And this presentation tonight serves as the mid-year LCAP update.
We're just waiting for the presentation to be, there we go.
Do each of you have a copy of the presentation?
We do, and we also have it on the screen here.
Okay. So. And we have hard copies available for the audience as needed. As you are aware, our vision statement is growing a community of engaged learners, connecting to future opportunities through innovative education. Our LCAP goals fall broadly into about 4 categories: academic, student engagement, community and family engagement, and high-quality, diverse personnel. Each district's LCAP is backwards mapped from 8 state priorities, which are conditions of learning, which entail basic services, implementation of state standards, and students' access to courses. The next priority is pupil outcomes, which entails student achievement data and other student outcomes. And also engagement, which includes parent involvement and student engagement and school climate. The metrics for the conditions of learning are set by the state. And so in our LCAP, we report on highly qualified teachers, our rate of those, access to instructional materials, that's the Williams review, facilities being in good repair, those are our FIT reports, content and performance standards implementation, English learner access to core, and also English language development standards. And then, as we noted in the former slide, broad course of study, both access and enrollment for our students. Student achievement metrics entail state assessment data, math, English, and also science, the A through G completion rate, CTE completion rate, English learner proficiency rates, English learner reclassification rates, and our advanced placement passing rates. And in terms of other student outcomes, we've chosen to monitor the rate of 12th graders completing at least 1 semester of college credit courses. We added that about 2 years ago. Metrics for engagement are input and decision-making from our educational partners and also parental participation. Student engagement entails attendance rates, chronic absenteeism, dropout rates in both middle and high school, and then graduation rate. And then school climate data entails suspension rates and expulsion rates. And again, 99% of these are prescribed by the state, and then we do our due diligence as a local agency with local control in theory to address our metrics. So most of the metrics are found on the California School Dashboard, which is a public website that anyone can access and identify county, district, and also site data. So in 2022-23, our enrollment was reported at 5,088. Socioeconomically disadvantaged comprised of 47.9% of our students, English learners at above 5%, and foster youth falling right under 1%. You might wonder, why do we call out those specific student groups in our demographic data? That's because those students experience more significant barriers in learning and engagement. And so those are unduplicated pupils that we receive money to support. And we determine at a local level how to accomplish that. Other student groups are English learners, 5.6%, foster youth, again less than 1%, homeless, 3.7%, again socioeconomically disadvantaged, 47.9%, and then students with disabilities, 15.9%. We're going to look at our academic outcomes in terms of state assessments in two ways. The first way we're going to look at our mid-year update data is through our English Language Arts assessment. And just as a friendly reminder, our 3rd through 8th graders take that summative state assessment, and then we choose to administer it to our 11th graders. Well, it's required for our 11th graders. We choose to administer our science to our 11th graders. And so that's measured through an average distance from standards. So there's a cut point at each grade level in terms of students meeting standard. And so our results showed that we are just short of meeting standards, so 32.5 points, and that was a decline of about 5 points. So although it's a decline, it's really kind of a maintain. Mathematics tells kind of a similar story. We are 70.2 points on average distance from standard in the district, and we maintained because there was a differential of less than a point. English learner progress, that's a bright spot for our district. It increased by 15.5%, and so out of all of our English learners, over 50% continue to make progress. And then you might notice that we have the cell phone bar, right, icon here. That's because in this iteration of the dashboard for college and career readiness indicator, it's a status only. And then next year's data, we will determine whether there was any progress or decline, et cetera. And so at this time, 30.8% of our students were considered prepared for college and career readiness. As I promised, we're going to look at that academic data in two ways. So on that previous slide, we looked at the data from the average distance from standard. And then this is a more traditional way of looking at our data, you might recall from No Child Left Behind and the assessments then. And so in terms of met or exceeded standards, we decreased about 2% from 2022. So about 39% of our students met or exceeded English Language Arts standards. And in mathematics, there was less than a 1% increase over 2022, with about 25% of our students meeting or exceeding standards. You'll notice goal language to the right of the slide. When we wrote the LCAP, we wrote it in terms of distance from standard, but the state has mainly reported a lot of the data in terms of percentages. So some of these goal slides will be slightly apples to oranges in terms of data that was beyond our control. So that may be a point of confusion. And our status for that goal, or that action rather, is not yet met. Our 5th, 8th, and we choose to administer 11th graders our California Science Test. In 2022, 25%, give or take, met or exceeded standards, and there was a slight growth over 2022, with about 27% of our students meeting or exceeding standards. While we did make an annual goal, meeting an annual goal rather, we didn't, we were kind of aggressive in our 3-year goals, and so we didn't make that 42% yet. And you can stop me with any questions at any time. I'm trying to be efficient. A through G completion rate. The gray bar is our baseline from 2021. Our dark blue is our 21-22 data, and then our lighter blue is the most recent data in terms of A through G completion. So for all students, 20% completed their A through G course requirements, 5% give or take of our English learners, 14% of our low income, and then 3.2% of our students with disabilities. And that's out of a cohort of 400 anticipated combined 4- and 5-year graduates. We did not meet our goal there, and we continue to do work in that area. Next month, we are going to partner with the Riverside County Office of Education to complete an A through G audit of transcripts so we can determine how we can better support our students and maybe determine gaps and where our students may be falling off of that A through G track. Another metric the state and Sierra Sands measures is the completion of CTE pathways. You'll recall that we have brought a few new CTE pathways for your approval. And CTE pathways usually entail a series of courses, and if a student achieves a C or better in that course sequence, then they achieve their pathway. So in 22-23, about 17% of our students completed at least one CTE pathway. 15.8% of our English learners did. About 16% of our low-income students did, and then our students with disabilities, about 12%, and that's out of the same cohort data. We didn't meet our 3-year goal there in terms of increasing the percentage of students completing at least one CTE pathway.
Do you have any, I mean, this graph looks kind of weird. Do you have any data that indicates why the big turn this past year?
We have to unpack that data kind of at a depth that may not be the best for this venue, but we have analyzed this. We have some theories. We think that some of our CTE pathway completion data was underreported when we do our final CalPADS upload for the dashboard. We also think that it's challenging for students as they have a limited amount of electives to complete a pathway, which can be 3 courses or 2 courses that are each a semester long. And so in talking with our boroughs team and with secondary administration, sometimes a student may begin a pathway in their sophomore year. And by the time they get to their junior or senior year, they may not have room in their schedule because a lot of the CTE courses are back-to-back 2 class periods. And so they may not have space in their schedule, and they may begin a whole nother pathway, never completing the original pathway.
So that schedule conflict issue, was that significantly different in 22-23 than it was in 21-22?
In speaking with our team, I don't believe so. So that is why we do believe we underreported the amount of CTE completers from the ARIES database, how it was captured into CalPADS, because it is an anomaly, but that doesn't explain away the challenge and the work that we need to do.
So do we feel like the goals are reasonable and achievable based on the numbers that we're seeing here that we're far from? Are they realistic?
I think that is the work that we need to do together as a community, and then also with the board's vision as we are engaging on our analysis of this 3-year LCAP and building a new LCAP. That is my lean, but I'm just one person. And I do think we need to look at our data trends and really determine whether or not our goals, to your point, are achievable or sustainable. We need to really have more information to inform our goal setting.
Thank you.
Would you mind going back one slide?
Yes.
Let's see. This A through G completion rate, that's sort of the, when students graduate, what classes did they take, and did they take the college prep classes? I guess similar question, do you have an assessment as to why that's a downward trend over a 3-year period?
In talking with the boroughs team, we believe that there was a bubble there of online students, and that was a challenge. We may have had, we know we had many more students not pass their initial course. And so we had a significant increase in our students who were in credit recovery to obtain that C, to replace the D or F. So that's data that we know is valid. And we need to analyze, again, through that A through G audit, our local graduation requirements, right? So the A through G math requirement is 3 years, and then our local requirement and state requirement is 2 years. So we've been doing a lot of work with our math pathways. And so thinking about, okay, with the implementation of Algebra 2 financial overlay, is that attractive to our students as relevant and meaningful math? Not that all math is lacking meaning. Former English teacher here. So we are doing work to that end. I just don't think it's paying off yet.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. On more of the positive side, what are we doing different in English learning that it's gone up so well?
In CTE?
Yeah. Well, not CT, it was at the beginning on English learners.
Oh,
Yeah, we were in the green on that one, and it was like,
yes.
man, that's
that's
good.
a bright spot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to that slide, and then we can always,
Yeah, I was gonna wait till the end, but then you said start asking questions, so then.
that is
well,
fine. We are relaxed, and we can pivot at any time. All right, so our English learner progress, as you noted, is a bright spot. It's green. So in our LCAP, we have decided at a local level to have an individual hold the work of supplemental English learner support. And the space is English Learner Coordinator, and the face is Jennifer Williams.
Oh.
And she works tirelessly to support English learners, make sure that they are receiving their English language development support in classrooms across the district. And she has provided wonderful professional development and is really making a difference in helping teachers support English learner progress. And so I just want to attribute that to her great work, and then the work of our teachers who are reaching out and asking. We are getting a lot more students in the district. We had some from Turkey that speak no English coming in. And so teachers are reaching out to the office and saying, how do we support these kiddos? And so again, Jennifer Williams has done amazing work with our teachers to support our English learners.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we just reviewed the A through G rate completion, And then we reviewed the CTE pathway completion rate. We want our students to be both college and career ready. So the state also measures the rate of students who met all of their A through G requirements, course requirements, and then also completed at least one CTE pathway. And so you'll see that this data really is an anomaly. So only 2% of our students last year met all the A through G requirements and then completed one CTE pathway. And so we still believe and think we can prove that we had some data reporting errors from, it's a human error. It's not, it's not blaming the system, that we need to really scrutinize that data and make sure we're capturing our CTE pathway completion.
Because we had a pretty good growth from 21 to 22.
Right. And so our 3-year goal was that all students, 15% of all students would achieve meeting their A through G rate and then one CTE pathway completion. And so I still think that's an appropriate goal, but we will need to dig into that a little bit more as we agree on our next LCAP. All right. We offer some advanced placement courses, and in those advanced placement courses, students can take the advanced placement exam offered the first 2 weeks or so of May each year. And if a student has a passing rate of 3 or more, then they are able to have earned college credit for that course. I'll let that sink in for a minute there. You'll notice that the language in the goal is odd. So let's look at it. Let's reveal that. So when we wrote the LCAP, what we were measuring was, out of the students who did take the AP exams, 90% or higher passed. And then we got stronger and more detailed CTE, or rather AP tables in the dashboard. And so we measure it differently. So I went back to 2021 to reset that baseline at 12.4%. Then 21-22 was 8%, and our 22-23 data was 21.8%. That's another relative bright spot. Okay, this is another odd one. I don't want it to be a distractor from the work, though. When we wrote our LCAP and we created our goal language, it was not inaccurately, well, it's hard to explain this, so I'm just going to say it. So the baseline was inaccurately documented as 20.3, and it will be corrected in the new LCAP. The way the data is presented in the dashboard can not always be easy for the reader to decipher. And so we captured a data point that was accurate in context, but not in the context of our baseline or goal. So in 2022-23, we see a decline of our 12th graders completing at least one college credit course there. 10 of the students completed at least one semester, and then 26 completed at least 2 semesters of a college credit course. Senate Bill 359 from several years back, that's when we worked on our math placement policy, to really ensure that our students were well prepared as they went into high school, and that all students and student groups achieved well in their math placement. And if not, then as a local entity, we review that and make adjustments. So what the data that you're looking at is the end of year grades for the freshmen who took Algebra 1. The reason why we're isolating that data point is that's the college preparatory math for freshmen generally. And so 32% of our students earned an A, 32% earned a B, 16% earned a C, and 20% of our students earned a D or an F, which is no credit, right? So those students, in theory, would be recommended or placed in credit recovery. We also look at that same data in terms of our student groups because we want to eliminate any gaps or ensure achievement for all. So in our African American student group, 87% earned an A to a D minus. Two or more races student group, 92% earned an A to a D minus. Hispanic Latino freshmen who took Algebra 1, 75% earned an A to D minus. The Asian group, 78% earned an A to D minus. Our white student group or white student population, 92% earning that A to D minus. Our low-income students are have the lowest percentage of earning an A through a D minus. English learners were at 80%, and our students with disabilities were at 93%. But I have to share with you, some of those student groups were really small, so that skews the data, right? We're not talking 1,000 students with disabilities, so that want to be very transparent about that. So we are required to report and measure how many of our English learners are attaining proficiency as measured by the English Language Proficiency Assessment of California. That's the LPAC. So we set our goal at 22%, which I think was reasonable, but we have not yet met it. 18% of our English learners attained proficiency as measured by the LPAC. So I would say we dipped obviously in 21-22. We're kind of maintaining that, so we really need to analyze why our students are not achieving proficiency on the LPAC. The state just released like practice LPAC assessments, and so we're working with Jennifer Williams and our teachers to help our students navigate the LPAC and be better prepared in the system. So hopefully we'll see that pay off. And then English learners reclassification rate, we want them to be reclassified as proficient. And so that's always a goal. We want our students to keep working towards that proficiency. So a relative bright spot, about 10% of our English learners were reclassified, and that's the point. The state gives us 5 years to take an English learner to complete proficiency. We really strive for that, but that can be challenging, right? All right, and then in student engagement data, attendance rate. So basically maintaining our attendance rate, we know that chronic absenteeism, which is a subsequent slide, has been a challenge. Our desired goal was to keep it at or above 95%. We didn't do that, but we had some extraordinary circumstances in our state and nation, and so overall that's good, but we want to be better.
Could we go back to slide real quick?
Yes.
I'm sure I clicked the button
It's
wrong.
okay.
You were talking about English learner proficiency. What is proficiency referring to?
Well, that's a great question. So English learners are measured in, like, you've taken the CASP assessment, right? In English or math or science?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in the same system, but it doesn't measure like English language arts standards, obviously not math standards or science standards. There are English language development standards, all right? And so the LPAC is an assessment which tests students in like auditory comprehension of the English language writing, listening. Let's see, I think I already said that. So there are several domains to test their proficiency, and it's pretty rigorous. So that's what it measures. Proficiency means what is the standard set for being able to navigate the English language, like speaking. That's what I was missing. That was an obvious one, right? Speaking English, and so there are standards by which the state measures that level of proficiency. So just as if you and I were learning a world language, right? There would be a level of being able to survive, like, where's the bathroom? My name is, et cetera. So it's a higher level of proficiency where you're able to engage in your academics.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Okay. All right, chronic absenteeism. This was a challenge across the state for the last 2 years. Our goal was to improve, and that doesn't mean increase our rate, it means to decrease it, right? So don't get excited that you see those bars going up. That's not good, right? In layman's terms. So we want to decrease our chronic absenteeism rate. And I anticipated this question. What does it mean if you're chronically absent? Well, it's defined as the amount of enrollment days as a student has, and if you've missed 10% or more. So the standard is we have 180 school days. Most students are enrolled at the beginning of the school year. If you have missed, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, 18, which is 10% of 180, math people, yes, that would mean you're qualified as a chronic absenteeism student. And so 18 days is about a month of school, so that's pretty significant. What's interesting in this data point, I think that sometimes folks forget, is it doesn't include our high school students because that data is represented elsewhere, kind of in college and career. We're not truly in college and career readiness, but it's not included in this data.
So the days of, you get one of those contracts, and I remember when I was in independent study and I used to grade those things, and
Yes.
those things don't count. I mean, if you, say you're gone for 5 days and you get a study contract, that's still 5 days that you counts as 5 days or not?
It doesn't, because if you fulfill your contract, then the district still receives ADA and credit for the student having completed the work.
Okay.
Great question. So it excludes students who fulfilled their contract. All right, going to graduation rate. I would say this one is of concern, right? Because we've typically sat in the high 80s or 90s. And so last year, we declined to 79.8% compared to 81%. That's not really statistically significant. However, it's not good enough. It's not the best for our students, and so we really need to look at, of the students, of the 400 that could have graduated, why did some not make it to the finish line, and really look at that, unpack that data, and see what we can do.
That 91.6%, was that during, that was COVID, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so that was a whole different set of marbles, probably.
Right. The attendance, graduation rate. If you recall, were you still in the district then?
Mhm.
Yeah. So the state allowed us to reduce the graduation credits and have more relaxed, graduation requirements. So that way, because there were so many barriers.
Sure.
So that may be why there were more
okay.
students
That's what I was
qualifying. And we had AB, was it 140 or 40? Assembly bill that we relaxed some of those requirements or gave some of our students some extra time to get their requirements done.
So this is an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you recall in general where we were before that?
Over 90.
I'll say in general, the state spiked that year. And so while other states that didn't relax the graduation requirements took a dip that first year of COVID, our state actually went up because of that. So I don't know about our district, but as a
So I was
state.
curious about districts specifically, if we were in the 90s or we were in the 80s, or do we know?
definitely the high 80s to over 90s historically.
Okay.
I can bring that data back to you.
That's
if you'd
okay.
like.
I just wanted in general, I know, we've all been dealing with this since COVID. Everything got thrown up in the
Yes.
air and tried to figure out what a baseline is anymore. But I just thought it might be good in a general sense. And if that's your general recollection, that's fine. I don't need it deeper than that.
Great questions. All right, on to other data which we don't want to be high, is the suspension rate. So we want to decrease that rate. And friends, let's just look at 2021. Obviously, less than 1% of students were suspended in the online year. Pretty. Thank you. We just needed a light moment here. Okay, right, so, right.
So are you suggesting we go back to that?
No,
Just
no.
wanted to confirm that.
Okay, so that would paint the picture there. Pretty tough to, be suspended from your online classes. So we're sitting at about 8%, a slight uptick there, right? Less than 0.5%. But this is significant work that we're doing in the district, right? How do we implement interventions so we can intervene in behavior before it escalates? I anticipated that you might wonder, what is our composition of suspensions? And so mainly it can be student conflict that maybe get physical. And then we also have a lot of vaping, right? And some drug use. And so those are our kind of heavy hitters in terms of suspension rate. I'm going to close that. No, just kidding. Do you have any other questions?
Board members have any other questions?
At the beginning, I noticed the one stat where it said 189 homeless. That number seems huge to me is it mostly older? Obviously old, no?
No.
Wow.
I want to take a moment to highlight the work of, so part of our Title I allocation, we're allowed to use to meet the needs of our McKinney-Vento or students experiencing homelessness. I would like to just publicly recognize Lisa Decker, who works tirelessly and endlessly. If you see her at Walmart, it's because in the workday, it's because she's out getting backpacks and all clothing for students, and it's a weekly event. And so I don't want to get upset here. I have seen her change lives with our Title I allocation and make students feel good about going to school because they have everything they need. So even hotel rooms. Wow.
So my question to that is there a place that we can donate funds for that, or does that just come out of our school budget, or how do we help that?
So we've received some one-time funding with the state recognizing that student population is increasing. We are allowed to use part of our Title I allocations. I'm not really sure how to answer that question. I know that we have our nonprofit Bee Mountain, right? But I would say, we are very judicious and also very intentional about outreach, right? Lisa provides training to our first points of contact at the school, like when students are registering and they may be without their records, right? Or they may indicate that they're doubled up or they don't have a consistent place to sleep and to live. So I would say we're doing a really good job of the outreach. I don't know that we need funds per se. I would never decline those.
Any other questions from board members? Any questions from members of the public on this report? Thank you so very much for the very thorough report.
You're most welcome. I'm going to see, there we go.
That brings us to item 5, reports and communications. We'll go first to our student member, Brody.
From Murray Middle School. Happy New Year to our students and community from Murray Middle School. We are excited to share our upcoming events and activities as well as recap how we ended the first semester. In December, we finished finals and celebrated our student talents with our annual variety show with performances from students and faculty. As we start this new year, we have many new exciting activities and events to continue to develop a positive student-centered culture at Murray. We kicked off this week with New Year's resolutions and reviewing and crafting new social contracts for our students using Capturing Kids' Hearts to lead our social emotional path at Murray. We are looking forward to our visit from Melanie Edmonds, walking our classrooms and seeing how we are using the information and developing in our toolboxes. We are also very excited to announce that our Murray Avid students are going to the Avid Sports Forum program where the Bakersfield Condors play against the San Jose Barracuda February 9th. On the way to this event, they will visit Cal State Bakersfield. Our music students are preparing to attend upcoming events in LA, with more to come next month. Avid has plans to visit college campuses in LA this spring, and we are just working to find transportation solutions to meet that goal. Basketball in 2024 is a huge part of our community and school events, with coaches Jayfert Hernandez, David Shadwick, and Kyle and Crystal Clamps to support our teams this season. At our first game this week, it was such a joy to see our community come together with our staff and students. We're having 8 games this week, and we've had huge numbers of parents and families come out to support our kids. The talent level is amazing, and we already had a stunner at the buzzer with a 3-point shot at midcourt, which we shared to our community. Finally, thanks to our teams, we have started recognizing the classified and certificated employees monthly on campus as we embrace our appreciation and gratitude for the team-wide support as a campus, a community, and modeling the way we want to treat others. From Monroe Middle School. Between our last report and this one, James Monroe has been a buzz. We had a winter neon lights dance that was reported to be a 10 out of 10 good time with great music and neon lights. Our spelling bee on December 15th was a super success with 2 very strong candidates able to represent the Tigers at the district level. First semester grades are in the books, and we kicked off second semester last week. Students came back ready for advisory rotations and some schedule updates. All went off without any major issues. We will celebrate our students and teachers January 19th at grade level assemblies. We will be recognizing academic success, core content expertise or focus, perfect attendance, and growth of our English language learners. Continuing our culture building from the first quarter, we will be awarding some teachers and students with special character awards, such as heroically helpful or awesomely authentic for our students and stupendous supporter for our teachers. Our big celebration that day is for our 8th graders who have been determined and working toward a goal of 90% meeting or exceeding standards on their English IABs. They finally met that goal with the IAB for reading informational text. The students have earned a Subway sandwich celebration. We are so proud of their hard work and accomplishments. We continue to intervene and enrich instruction and advisory classes. Our counselors are pushing into classes regularly, providing support and instruction, along with supporting small groups of students. They are an integral part of our systems of support at James Monroe. And our teachers are renewing the social contracts and expectations with students to continue the work of capturing kids' hearts. Basketball kicked off this week with games against Lone Pine. We are looking forward to a fun season and getting to see what our Tigers can do on the court. Overall, 2024 is off to a great start. We are working toward a strong finish for this school year. From Mesquite, even though we only had a few weeks since our last report, another 2 students were able to complete their credits and graduate, which brings our total to 14 for this year. Students culminated the final week with project completion, late work turn-ins, and a winter feast to celebrate their efforts. While we did not have the parent turnout we had hoped to achieve, the students enjoyed ham sandwiches donated by the staff, cookie decorating, and an array of refreshments. Mrs. O'Connell rebooted our music class this semester, and we have a waiting list for the class while we order more guitars to meet the demand. We are excited to meet the needs of our students as they request a wider array of electives to supplement their academic coursework. Thank you, students, for engaging and teachers for rising to the occasion. Let's have a great start to the new year, Dragons, and show them how to soar. And from Burroughs. Burroughs has returned from winter break, and students have transitioned into a new semester with the help of the counselors, teachers, library, and staff who facilitate textbook return and distribution and scheduling issues. Our basketball, wrestling, and soccer teams have been playing hard as they get towards the end of their seasons with league matches. In addition, members of the trap shooting team from last year were able to go to a 5-star competition in Apple Valley. The Burroughs cheerleaders went to a competition this weekend and earned 3rd place. They have their last competition this weekend. ASB sophomore class officers have been working hard to make King of Hearts a great dance. Everyone in ASB has also been working hard to prepare for our winter rally. The Spirit Days, the week of the rally, are themed after board games: Twister Tuesday, Scrabble on Wednesday, Jumanji on Thursday, and the Game of Life on Friday. We are hoping to see great participation and fantastic outfits. Our AV club has been working with our counselors on a set of informational videos that go over each academic department at Burroughs, including classes, requirements, and much more. They're also working on the first broadcast of the semester.
Thank you so much, Brody. We really appreciate your participation in our meeting. We do realize you aren't feeling 100% tonight, so if you need to excuse yourself early, you're welcome to do that.
I believe I'll go ahead and do so.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. That brings us to reports from members of the board. Any board members have items they'd like to report on? Mr. Campbell, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Bev Eubanks and her staff for the awesome meeting we had with the Superintendent's Council on last week. It was really well done. I just want to thank you. And all those meetings that we go to are so awesome. I just want to thank you so much for that. And Dr. Safko, you and Ms. Decker and your team, awesome job today. I really appreciate that.
Any others? If not, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, President Ferris and members of the board. So much going on. Really appreciate that presentation from Dr. Savko. You can see the progress, the bright spots of celebration that we have, and the work to be done. And there is a lot to be done and a few of us to do it. So just a quick update though, month 4 enrollment still holding up from last year. So we're up 17 students. We have 5,060 students at this time. We did in month 4 have a dip in attendance and from last year. So that's something that we're working hard, and school teams are working with families and students to see how we can support and make sure students are at school ready to learn. As you've heard from the student board report, our schools are back in session after a 3-week winter break, and we've seen learning from the first, eagerness to return to school routines, eagerness from staff, students, and families. So it seems like they're ready to be back in school, and we're off to a great start to 2024. Did want to acknowledge that January is School Board Recognition Month, and I'd like to just take a moment to thank each of our elected school board members for their energy, passion, and thoughtful decision-making as we strive to support student success by establishing goals and policy priorities that lead the district forward. So thank you very much for your service to our community. As you see, we're trying a new seating arrangement today, some new presentation approaches, so look forward to your feedback to see if that's working for us. Our schools have really stepped up and helped us with a last push for gathering household income forms as well as military-connected family forms. That all of those forms make a huge difference in our budget to support students. And just as of today, the updates we have, that work is making a difference. We have 53.3% of our students showing as in those unduplicated categories Dr. Savko was referencing. Historically, we've been at 55 or higher. So we're in that last week of a push to try to get those forms in, and just really appreciate everyone. It's an all hands on deck approach to get that going. And so we're hopeful that we can get that extra couple percent, because that means so much resources for our students. And then just back to the presentation that we just heard. There is a lot to be done. We're taking it very seriously. Some great celebrations. I was really glad, and we deferred to Brody to share. But already, as people are looking at the first semester data, they're sharing those celebrations. We're seeing the awards assemblies coming. Students at an entire grade level getting 90% on those IABs, those interim assessment blocks that mirror our state assessments that are on our state standards. So we are seeing growth. It is little by little, step by step, but it takes all of us, and we want more growth. And so I know we'll be talking more about some positions that are on the agenda, but each of those positions have been thoughtfully identified to help us meet the goals. So we'll be talking about our goals, updating our goals again a little bit later on the agenda, and just wanted to thank Dr. Savko for bringing the data, because that's what we want to make our decisions around, not what we feel, not what we want per se, but what we need to do on behalf of our students today. So we will be proposing some positions, and that's only a few of the positions on the docket. That doesn't include the TOSA positions that we've already identified, because those job descriptions exist. So we're bringing forward today positions that have not existed or new or revised job descriptions, but we've already talked with our union leadership and are already planning to enhance the teacher support, the staff support to impact student learning, as that is our goal. So thank you very much. And one last thing is I'm looking forward to, after this board meeting, we'll be looking at some community survey data to understand our community's interests and priorities as we build that next LCAP. And so we will be launching our local control accountability plan annual survey January 22nd for our staff and community, parents, and then our students will take it about a week later. So by February 9th, so between January 22nd and February 9th, we'll have that accessible to everyone to take, to help us provide input and help us to prioritize what are those actions and services that will best meet our needs, so we prioritize our work over the next 3 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And if I could take just a minute, I want to make sure it's understood. I know we've talked about this among ourselves often, but I just want to clarify, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Moore, but the difference between that 53% and the 55% as far as benefit financial to the district is not a difference between 1% and 2%. It is the difference from whether we get the concentration grant or not. So if we're 53% and we don't get to the 55%, we don't get the concentration money at all.
Right,
So
I
that
believe
is
we're talking about millions of dollars.
That's a huge difference, and we believe we are not talking about bumping our numbers up or falsifying our numbers. We truly believe that the problem is we're not getting the people to report, and so we have the need. We have the students out there that are providing the need, but because we can't count them, we lose those significant numbers of funds because we haven't identified that 1.5%. So anybody, anywhere that can talk to and listen about what this issue is, it is huge for our district. And it's really just based on whether we can get the folks to report so we can count them, so we can get those dollars. So it would be easy to think that basically because we're not counting that 1.5% or whatever it is, we lose 1.5%. That's not it. We don't get it at all. So sorry if I got on the soapbox there, but I just think this is a really, really important issue. And my computer decided to close on me. So we now go to item 4, report to the Board of Trustees by the Desert Area Teachers Association. Ms. Poole.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Moore, community colleagues. Here we are, second week back. Feels like 5th week, but we're back. For the first time, we had our 3-week winter break, and I have truly had different teachers approach me in public to say, thank you for the 3-week break. I mean, we all vote on it, but I've heard just really, really positive things about the 3 weeks. I know for me, it gave me time to actually, because at the secondary, we have grades due when we get back, right? So a lot of us are giving our finals, and then we know we've got this time off, but we also have to get our grading done. And so by having the 3 weeks, it was really time to relax, sleep in, and kind of forget about school, be with family. So the Thursday before we were coming back to school, I thought, I can go back in the classroom on Monday. And it was so great to have had that amount of time. And of course, I worked, I did grading, and I got some lesson planning done. So we still are using it for that. But the 3 weeks was great. Next week we have 2.5, but calendar committee meetings February 1st. So we'll probably be seeing that again. Okay, so there was a lot about the that report. And I want to start out by saying that we teachers, we want our kids to succeed. Like that's just a given. And when I say we want our kids to succeed, you can see that in that so many of us are buying snacks, right? We are going out, we're buying snacks for our kids. A lot of us, secondary, we've got pads, we've got tampons in our room because it's easier, they can just grab without having to go anywhere else. I have blankets in my room, right? We buy fun Band-Aids. If you need a Band-Aid for me, tell me your mood so I can match a Band-Aid. And we have Kleenex, right? And some of this stuff we can certainly get from the school or the district, but a lot of us just keep this in our classroom because we know if our kids feel safe, right? If they know, I'm hungry today, I know I can go to this teacher and get something to eat, right? That's all the stuff that leads to success. And we also know that success looks different for different kids, right? And we certainly want the numbers. We want our kids to be successful, that they get out of high school and can do whatever it is they want to do, hopefully college. But it's also what I want to talk about, it's not just on the secondary, right? Like those kids have 8 years under their belt by the time they get to us. And I respect my colleagues who are at elementary, like keep them happy because it's just not a job I want. And they probably feel the same way, that they probably don't want to come up to the big kids. So I think that we get it, that we're all in this together. And we certainly want to see our kids succeed, but I think we also need to keep in mind what else goes on in a school, and that teaching is just one small part. We're called teachers, but it's one small part of what we do. And it's hard to really teach, and it's hard for kids to really learn when you have kids dropping the F-bomb and, big behaviors in the classroom, elementary, secondary, and we don't always have the support that we should have, right, to get these done. And so I just want to keep that in mind. We are all for getting our kids to succeed, get those numbers up. English does pretty well. But we want to see that for all our kids, but I do want to put that out there, that there is a lot more to teaching in the classroom every day. And it's not until you are in that classroom every day as the responsible party, as the one that has to have the lesson plans. And even if that lesson plan is written for you, you are the one delivering it. And so what you think is going to take 7 minutes could take 30 seconds, and it could take 30 minutes. You don't know. And so until you're in there every day, you don't really get what it is to teach. And there are so many other factors. And so in the midst of all this, we know society has changed. We see that, and we know it, and we're living it, and we're thinking that we can get a little normal and that's all over. But in our district, we're doing this facilities change. And I've been to Monroe. I know it's got to go. But in the midst of all this, we are going to have teachers, really dedicated professionals who care, having to make some really hard decisions. And kids are they're expecting, they've all this time, like when I get to this middle school, I've got another year here, you know, like things are going to change. And I just really want us to make sure that we remain focused on the human part of teaching, because teachers are human, and I think it's really easy to forget that and just focus on data. And we've got human beings who give their all every day in the classroom, and suddenly, through no fault of their own, it's just that Monroe has gotten old and we're not rebuilding it, we're going to have teachers having to shift, and families suddenly going, well, this feels really different. So all I want to say is let's keep in mind when we're talking about data and we're talking about statistics that it's human beings who are in the classroom with other human beings who are pretty small. And while we strive to getting, you know, good numbers and all that, let's also remember that far more important than any data is what's happening with the humans in our classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to item number 5, report to the Board of Trustees from the California School Employees Association.
Hello, School Board President, board members, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff, and community. We conducted our monthly meeting earlier this week, and we discussed lots of stuff, not just our pay. I sent out a survey to my members wanting some input from them as we head into negotiations. We discussed the results of the survey that I sent out, and some of the items that were discussed in our survey was training and the lack thereof for classified staff. One of the things that has been discussed in regards to that is with the Capturing Kids' Hearts that was given as full days for certificated staff, but it was only offered for 3.5 hours in the morning or afternoon for classified. This is something that the district wants to implement across the district, but has not properly trained the classified staff on it. Classified staff are often left alone with students. I know myself, I have enrichment groups, grades K through 5 in the morning, and collaboration rotations in the afternoon. But a lot of the classified staff are often left with children without a certificated teacher and could benefit from the full training of Capturing Kids' Hearts. But not only that training, but more training being offered, especially when first hired, since they often feel they are thrown into the wolves and you either sink or swim. Another item we discussed was employees feeling if they were treated fairly. Several responses came back with if they work outside of their job description, they are treated better. However, that is not fair to add more to the already overworked and underpaid staff. And they feel if they don't comply, they are looked down on. The members were asked if they felt they had a safe, healthy, non-hostile work environment. And for the most part, they do, except for some who feel because of how the students treat them and the lack of support from their admin, there are non-healthy environments. We also discussed reclassifications, transfers, and seniority. For the most part, it was okay, but some said that reclassing is hard for it to happen, even though some job descriptions have not been updated in years and years. For example, mine, as a library media specialist, has not been updated since 1998. I was still in high school. While things continue to be added to their plate with no more compensation, looking into reclassing some jobs would be beneficial. Last month, I was asked if I knew about pay and hours and benefits from fast food restaurants that I always mention in regards to pay. I did do some research and found that Panda does offer a 401k and has a company match. They offer health benefits to full-time employees. Starbucks also offers a 401k, or as they call it, future roast. They also offer benefits to full-time employees, but also offer it to part-time employees, and both have other added benefits such as tuition assistance and free meals and discounts. It was brought up about the total compensation. However, that only really applies to a portion of your classified staff, which are your full-time employees who work at least 7.25 to 8 hours a day. Our part-time employees, if they have the insurance, pay a lot for it. Our pay is obviously always a hot topic at our meetings, as it is not competitive to fast food, and come April 1st, we'll definitely be way below competitiveness with fast food as they move to $20 an hour. And if you look at our pay scale, a lot of our jobs do not even make that, even after working here for years. As we head into negotiations, I know this year is gonna be rough, But we hope to continue to work on our pay scale with the district to help alleviate our high turnover rate. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 6, communications from the public. The board will provide time during the discussion of each agenda item for members of the public to comment. But at this time, members of the public may address the board on an item that is not on the agenda. Comments should relate to items of public interest within the board's jurisdiction. The law prohibits the board from taking action on any items that are not on the agenda, but if appropriate, your comments will be referred to staff for response. When addressing the board, please state your name at the podium and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. In accordance with the board bylaws, the board will limit the total time for public input to 30 minutes. Those wishing to address the board after that 30-minute time limit may do so at the end of the scheduled meeting agenda. So we now open public comment.
My name is Kathy McCoy. I teach at Pierce, and I am the data vice president. I would kind of like to piggyback off of what Eileen said because as I was hearing her say all of the things that teachers do, from her experience at the secondary, I thought I would kind of throw in a little bit of what we do at elementary. Today we had a sub position not filled, which continues to be an issue, where we are then taking students in to our classrooms because they need the teaching and supervision. And I saw teachers scrambling to find snacks for 5th graders who are used to eating lunch at 10:45, who today wouldn't get it until 12:15, spending their break time to their recess break time when this is normally making copies using the restroom, scrambling to find snacks to feed those hungry kids because they didn't have snacks of their own and for whatever reason may not have had breakfast. I saw them writing emergency sub-plans when that was needed, making copies, helping out, saying, what can I do? Do you need help? What can I do to help you, to admin, to each other? I see classrooms full of books bought by teachers, supplies bought by teachers, things we want our students to have access to that is not provided by the district because it might be considered like an extra. You know, we do have a library where kids can check out books. We haven't been able to do that recently, but we're starting again. But we also want them to have those books that are interesting, those things that are interesting. I personally, 3rd grade, we're doing a technology unit for Benchmark. And I went through my house and found all kinds of old technology to bring in to share with the students to get them interested. And boy, I tell you, there's nothing more interesting to kids than seeing, you know, phones that you have to push buttons on, or talking about rotaries, or seeing VHS tapes and getting to pull back the top so that you can see the tape. And I even had one student wear his gloves because he said, I didn't want to get oil onto that tape. And I was thinking your gloves are maybe not, not as clean as your hands, but thank you for trying so hard to be respectful. All of those things that teachers are doing, taking on extra duties, helping out, staying past their work hours. And sometimes we hear, you know, in our country, in our society, how come teachers don't do more? And if those teachers would only do this or that. And I just want to point out, as we've heard from several people, that there are so many teachers in our district who go far and above beyond what they're asked to do and still want to help and still try to do more. And we live in those classrooms, and that's our community, and that's our home. And these students, we care about them so much, and we want them to have what they need. And yet again, still, we are, you know, expected to stay on that pacing guide, the curriculum map, all of those things that we try to do. And so I love to hear it, and I just want to make sure that you keep that at the forefront of your mind as you think about our duties. So thank you.
Thank you. If there are no others for public comment, we will move on to educational administration. Item 1, approval of Reality Works Guide Weld live for Medal 1, 2, and 3 at Burroughs High School.
Okay, we're going
Ms.
to see if
Decker.
this works. I'm either too tall or too short. Good evening, President Ferris. Yeah. Members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff and community, which I have my back to, I'm sorry. I'm back. The Metal Pathway is seeking to get some new equipment. They are adding to their guidance system. The previous one, they don't actually wear the welding helmet, and this one is actually VR, so that they're welding virtually so that they can move right into the welding booth. So the teacher's really excited to add this to his repertoire of things that the kids can do. And it also saves us funding because we're not having them use materials and perhaps waste them and then have to try again. So this is really exciting for them. So we are looking at a guide weld live system, and it's about $29,000, and it will be funded out of the Career Technical Education Incentive Grant. So it is recommended that the board authorize the purchase of the welding system for Burroughs Welding Pathway as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions by board members?
Exciting.
Any questions by members of the public or staff? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Decker. Brings us to item 2, approval of the Sierra Sands Unified School District 23-24 School Accountability Report Cards and SARCs.
Good evening. The school accountability report cards are part of the ongoing accountability system in California. Since 1988, state law has required that all public schools receiving state funding prepare and distribute a school accountability report card. It provides information to parents and community about multiple data points such as demographic data, school safety, climate, academic data, school completion rates, class sizes, teacher and staff information, curriculum and instruction descriptions, post-secondary preparation information, and fiscal and expenditure data. School report cards must be updated annually and published by February 1st. Education Code 35256 requires that the governing board approve all SARCs and then evaluate the data contained in the SARCs as part of the board's regular review of the effectiveness of district programs. The SARC drafts are posted on our district website, and it's recommended that the board approve the SARCs as presented.
Move the recommended action.
It has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from members of the board? I would just like to comment that there's a lot of really good information in those, and reviewing those, I think it is one of those things that kind of brings you back to those aha moments again and helps us identify who we are and what we're doing in so many different ways. So they're on that website, and it's a good place to look when you have nothing else to do. Any comments or questions, members of the public? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. That brings us to item 7, Policy Review Committee. Item 1, approval, let's see, an update of board bylaws, policies, and administrative regulations. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, President Paris. So as you know, at the October board meeting, you decided to implement a board policy review committee, which has met to review a number of updates to board bylaws, policies, administrative regulations. And so what we've done is we've digested all of them by department for you. All of the attachments were there, and it's the red line version, so you can see at a glance what the changes are. And so you'll see in each of the categories, and we try to call them out, which is deleted, revised, and such. And I just wanted to also identify that these changes are in line with legislation and best practice from the California School Boards Association. They provide templates as well as all the rationale and the guidance for us. And so what we're doing is we're just updating. And we have a number of policies and bylaws to update. So we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence. And we have a whole separate meeting to discuss, really think through, make sure that they're ready before they come forward. So the ones before you here have already been reviewed at that level. And we believe that they're ready for board action. So it is our recommendation that the board approve the new updated and deleted board bylaws, policies, and administrative regulations as presented. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? I would just like to comment that I do appreciate this process. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but as we've gone through the first iteration of it, I think it kind of assures us that we are doing that due diligence to look at them carefully and with timely discussion. There are two board members at this current state. It's Mrs. Campbell and myself, and it gives us that opportunity to do that deep dive. And on behalf of the rest of you, to kind of give you a sense of where we ought to go. Yeah, you're welcome. But I think it does make sure that policy making is our number one responsibility. So I think making sure that as we review all of these policies, that we give adequate time and attention to is important. So I appreciate the introduction of the process, and I believe it's going to work well for us.
Quick comment or question. Yeah, I appreciate this approach. I think it's good. One of the things I wanted to make sure of, though, is that I know we lean on the CSBA's, board policy review, or I'm sorry, their templates, their recommended policies. And I'm confident, over the years, seen that they're solid policies based on current law, and it's very helpful. But we also have the opportunity to tailor these to our own local circumstances. And so I guess, as we keep going through this process, it's very helpful if we hear that, yeah, this was the CSBA template, but because of something local, we added this paragraph, or we tweaked this thing this way. So if there are any modifications to their template, it'd be nice to know that. Somehow have that keyed in the packet, or.
So are you saying that in the report or the process, that if there are things that are not just the recommendation in order to correct our policy to align it with current law, that we identify what options we selected and why? Is that what you're asking for?
Not so much, so for the public's edification, the CSBA, they provide a kind of a baseline template, and then they have some optional bolt-ons that you can choose based on your district's processes. And that's not really what I'm not looking for that rationale. I'm okay with that. It's just if we do something, if we do our own creative writing to add into a policy or modify a policy, it'd be nice to know specifically what those things are.
So, Mr. Alco, you're just talking about like a blue, instead of their red strikeout, ours would be blue. So when we look at it as board members, we can see what the original changes or suggested changes are from CSBA, and we see what our addition was just by throwing in a different color, almost like a.
Yeah, I mean, however it's done, but just something that kind of calls those modifications. I think those are frankly, they're probably pretty rare, and probably none of them in this item tonight. But just as a normal process, if we can find some way to do that, whether it's blue or red or whatever. I mean, I'm colorblind, and I can't tell the difference between the red stuff and the black stuff, so it's it's all kind of a mess for me anyway. But if you do something to call that kind of stuff out, it would be I'd appreciate it.
I would suggest that it could be helpful for whoever serves on the committee to include that in the presentation when it comes. If there are specific things that we have leaned on that were other than just what the recommendations are, that the people on the committee at that time can share. And by the way, on this specific policy, we considered this because of the uniqueness of our district and the way we do things. We felt like it was the appropriate thing to do. I think that makes more sense than just a line item.
But if you do both, it gives us the heads up in advance.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Except for Kurt, because he can't tell colors.
Well,
I'll have somebody point the different things out to me.
Mary said she would read them to you.
She will.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take that. That sounds like fun.
All right, any other questions or comments from members of the board? Any questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. That brings us to item 8, Personnel Administration, approval of memorandum of understanding with Inyo County SELPA.
That was pulled.
I'm sorry, we pulled that one, so we go to number 2, report to the board, quarterly report on the Williams uniform complaints.
President Ferris, since there's nothing to report, I recommend that we accept the report.
Okay, been moved that we accept the report as written. Do we have a second? He made the recommendation as a motion, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. That brings us to item 3, adoption of resolution 15-23-24, National School Counseling Week. Mr. Ault.
I sat because, one, I don't make a very good window, and two, there's no way you'd be able to hear me. So, President Ferris, members of the board, staff, and community, the purpose of National School Counseling Week is to focus public attention on the unique contributions of professional school counselors within U.S. school systems. National School Counseling Week, sponsored by the American School Counselor Association, highlights the tremendous impact school counselors can have in helping students achieve school success and plan for a career. This special week honors school counselors for the important role they play in helping students examine their talents, strengths, abilities, and interests. Counselors work in professional partnerships with teachers and support personnel to provide an educational system where students can realize their true potential. As all educators focus their efforts on improving academic achievement for all students, it is important that we recognize school counselors for their continuing efforts in reducing barriers to learning and in providing the support necessary for all students to achieve at the highest level. Resolution number 15 declares the week of February 5th through the 9th, 2024 as National School Counseling Week in Sierra Sands Unified School District. Adoption of this resolution designates a time when administrators, staff, parents, students, and the community have an opportunity to recognize and salute district counselors and their many contributions to our students' success. A copy of Resolution 15 will be displayed at all district schools and sites, and there'll be other recognition throughout the week. There are no financial implications. It is recommended that the board adopt resolution number 15 as presented and approve February 5 through 9, 2024 as National School Counseling Week in Sierra Sands.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the resolution? Any questions or comments on the resolution from members of the public or staff? If I stall just a minute, we'll have Mr. Rockwell back up here. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 4, waiver of request enabling the district to assign individuals in certificated positions without appropriate credentials. Mr. Ault.
Approval of the governing board is required when a district is filing for a variable term waiver, provisional internship permit, or a short-term staff permit in order to assign an individual who's not appropriately credentialed for his or her assignment. Approval is requested for the district to submit requests to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing for a variable term waiver, provisional intern permit, or short-term staff permit in order that the district may assign 2 certificated employees.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public or staff? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 5, authorization of new management position, Director of Elementary Education.
So the next several agenda items are what Dr. Moore had referred to in her superintendent's report. We have done a very thorough and exhaustive needs assessment analysis in alignment with our current and future LCAP and board goals. It has been determined that 5 new management level positions will be created. The Director of Elementary Education position is one of the 5. Under the direction of the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services and in cooperation with other district administrators, the Director of Elementary Education shall assist the Assistant Superintendent in providing leadership, vision, and strategic direction for curriculum, instruction, assessment, school improvement, and professional development for elementary administrators. Currently, there are 2 management positions within the Educational Services Department. There's the assistant superintendent, and there is the coordinator of educational technology projects and categorical programs. The coordinator position will be assumed by the director of elementary education position, and the current coordinator will be appointed to the position of director of elementary education position, and I should clarify that that won't take place until July 1, 2024. We need to finish out the school year as we're currently organized. Financial implications, the director of elementary education will be assigned as a class 3 on the management schedule. The increased cost of this position is funded by the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant and therefore will not impact the general fund. It is recommended the board approve this new management position of Director of Elementary Education as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Go ahead, Gordon.
Well, the reason I was grimacing is I'm not sure how to articulate my question, really. So we're looking at adding 5 new management positions. And, you know, I think I'm always wary of increasing the management staff and, you know, making sure that it's, you know, to me, there's the concept of leverage has to come into play, right? Is it, you know, the fact that we are bringing in a management person, does that help the rest of the staff get their job done better, easier, faster, you know, more cost effectively, whatever? And so I'm kind of curious about the, you know, have these positions been discussed with our like bargaining units, and are we, I mean, what's the general philosophy for making these changes versus doing anything else that we might do with these funds?
Yeah, so as context, as you know, we can't fly and advertise a position until it's been approved by the governing board. And so in many cases, there is a need, and we know we will fill a position when we bring that job description to you. We've done the analysis, and we believe there's a need and that there would be value added, although it is yet to be determined, dependent on lots of variables, whether or not the other positions will be filled. This position is a little bit unique, but the next 4, we want to have that as an option at our discretion to be able to add that position in the future, but there'll be lots of analysis regarding applicants, you know, different pools of applicants you'll see in a moment. Some of the, or 2 or 3 of the other ones, it's either a director or a coordinator. Well, that's not knowing who's going to apply and what their qualifications are. So while it is we have done a thorough analysis, and we do have a strong belief that these positions would positively impact school culture, academic, and instructional program. You know, this is, at this point, this is merely to put us in a position so that we could actually implement down the road. Potentially July 1, 2024.
Oh, yeah, great. Thank you for that. And you know, from things I've heard over the years, it was yellow for a second. Things I've heard over the years, certainly having, you know, looking at this item and the next one, having a, you know, individual focused on elementary and an individual focused on secondary, you know, very likely could provide a lot of, you know, horsepower to, you know, those areas where maybe we've been spread pretty thin lately, well, forever probably. So those are good. The other thing I always, when I see, it's not often that we see, that we see positions tied to being funded by grants, because grants are typically, you know, limited in their time frame. And, you know, we kind of have a hard and fast rule that we don't apply one-time money to ongoing expenses. So I guess, one of the things that I see in this, we're funding these with grant money, as opposed to impacting the general fund, which is good. But we also recognize the fact that these are funds that are probably limited in time, and therefore we're, kind of standing straight up and looking in the mirror and saying, hey, if we get through, 3 years of grant money and the grant money's gone, we likely will say goodbye to the position.
Potentially, I think.
Unless, well, certainly, yeah. If it turns out that there's, just been massive success with having that position, we'd find some other way to fund it, I'm sure. But, the fact that we realize that it's a possibility that this may go away if the money dries up.
Right.
Again, I think that's upfront a good stance.
Well, I think that speaks to your first question about the value added. Yes, there is a threshold for the number of years, and it's different for, each of these positions. In some cases, it's 4 years, and in some cases, it's 2, and then in the community schools, it'll be year to year. And we have that opportunity to analyze the data, look at, what kind of, improvements have been made, and then determine when the grant expires, whether or not this is something we need to prioritize, of course, contingent on budget and economy. But it gives us an opportunity with these one-time funds to do a test run, essentially, to be able to put this in place and determine to what extent it makes a big difference, and then have those conversations as we approach the sunset of the grants. Yep.
So I have a question.
Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, really? Oh. So, since we're going through all of them, we've read them all, and you're talking about them. Kurt mentioned some of the other ones. I like the idea of being able to see if it's something that's going to work out. I enjoy that, but I don't enjoy telling someone, hey, sorry, we're out of money. Now what are we going to do? And in that case, we kind of talk about the human element again. And it's really hard to tell someone, hey, you know what, the grant money ran out, so we can't do this anymore because the governor took another $62 billion out of our, our budget or something. Right. That worries me a little. But it's kind of a good, bad thing. I do like what you're doing, because there are obvious situations here where we do need to, help people out because they're over. Right. They're over.
Yeah, so I think it would be beneficial to point out, a piece that's not included in this description, and that is, we need to have within our district, we know from past experience, a pipeline for people that are interested in management positions. They have to be able to get experience, and this potentially could for some, many, I don't know how many, end up being that situation. Let's say somebody from within the district applies, is selected, and is approved by the board. We now need to replace that administrator from wherever he or she came from. Gives an opportunity to a current teacher who has expressed interest in administration then to bump up and get a few years under their belt. So while you're correct, if the fund, when the funding sunsets and we don't feel we have sufficient funds to maintain it, there would clearly be the opportunity for somebody to go back into the classroom. I understand that is a hard conversation to have, but I can say with some confidence, and I think people probably would agree with me, there would probably be a lot of opportunity within the district to move into another administrative position.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add too is that if I looked at one of these jobs and this was the job I wanted for the rest of my life, And I didn't know that there might be a time limit on it. And somebody walked up to me 3 or 4 years later and said, yeah, this was temporary funds, so we're just not funding it anymore, so you're done. Yeah, I wouldn't like that. But we're on TV saying, hey, this might run out and we might not have the position, so that people are going to have to walk into this with their eyes wide open.
Yeah, and that'll be a part of the advertisement. You know, we like to be transparent. And it's not if, it's when. It will sunset. The if is whether or not it's found to be a priority and if we can budget for it some other way. But yes, as we advertise these positions, all of that is made clear.
So I just want to add, I think it's important as we're kind of grouping much of this discussion to apply to all the elements, and each one of them has some unique facets and requirements. So I want us to make sure that what we're talking now in generality of the type of approach we're taking, and I agree. I think it's important that we commit as a district to understand that we are committing specific grant funds, and that we evaluate, if we choose to hire for these positions, that we evaluate exactly what the contribution is, and we evaluate the value added to the district. And correct me if I'm wrong, but just because the grant goes 3, 4, or 5 years, it doesn't mean we have to maintain the position 3, 4, 5 years. We can, after a year, if we recognize, gosh, this isn't really giving us the bang for the buck that we need, we don't have to continue that position. So I think it's critical that, as we do in so much of our role, is we continue to evaluate what we're doing, how we're doing it, to improve what we're doing for kids. I think in general, the fact that we're recognizing many needs we have. We had a report earlier this evening that we all looked at and said, yeah, we have need. We've got kids with needs we're not meeting. How can we better approach that? I think we have to do something like this. We do have the grants that we haven't had before. We've got money that we haven't had before. Let's apply that money to something that we believe can be productive in those ways. And let's keep our eye on it closely to make sure that those dollars are being spent wisely, and then do the things for kids we need to. And like I say, in each area, there are different gains and different areas of focus. So I don't want to diminish the fact that right now we're just talking generalities, but I think it's important that in general, we look at these closely, we continue to analyze them, and we meet the needs of our kids.
So we've kind of moved into talking about all of them. I should make a point about this one and the next one, the Director of Secondary Education. Within that job responsibility is federal title responsibilities, and so these two positions won't be fully funded by that grant. They're ongoing funds, because they'll be responsible for implementing all of the title categoricals and some state categoricals. So I just want to point that out, that it's what we're saying is absolutely true about the last three. These first two will not be fully funded by the grant. They will have ongoing funding for a portion of it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got one other question just came to me. You know, in several of these others, we were saying director/coordinator. This one, we're just saying director. And I think that makes sense based on the individual that's sort of fulfilling that role now and would kind of roll into this position. But that person may decide that she wins the lottery and, you know, wants to move to Casper, Wyoming for, you know, now. Seems like it might make sense to, you know, include a coordinator position description for this job as well, so that you have that flexibility if there comes a need to fill that position. you know,
So
for whatever reason in the next couple of years.
So I know for certain that person would not go to Wyoming. She would go to Kansas, I'm pretty sure. But I think that's a good point. Obviously, we couldn't add that to this agenda, but we could bring that to a subsequent.
But do we need to? We already have that other position. We just wouldn't fill
Yeah,
this
that's true.
position.
Yes.
Right, we have a
So,
coordinator.
yeah, we already have a coordinating position. We don't have to approve that. We just would decide, okay, we don't,
Right.
we could interview and then place the person in the position based on what their qualifications were, either or.
I guess
That
my
make sense?
assumption was that the current coordinator position probably has a reasonably different job description than what would be the
Right,
coordinator
but if
for
you,
elementary.
if you fly them both, because we already have the descriptions. If you fly them both, depending on the qualifications of who you get to apply, you can place them in either position based on what your desire is.
Yeah, I
Because we
guess-
already have the position, the other position we don't have.
The state and federal job description is what we have. We don't have a coordinator of elementary education, which is what I think Mr. Rockwell is mentioning. So
Oh, I
it
see,
is,
right.
it is different. So we would want to revise it in the future, should that become an interest.
So I don't know if this is the proper time to ask this, but so let's say the person gets this position, which is we're down the line on this agenda. Do we still have that position that she was in? Will that need to be filled, or are we taking away that position and just adding this one is what I think I'm hearing,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
So we have a number of job descriptions or positions on the books that we don't intend to fill.
Right.
And that's kind of what would happen. So we would have that job description just sitting there unless we chose to take action or, maybe we archive it at some point. In fact, that's something that's on the list to do in HR. We have a lot of wish lists of things to do in HR, clean up job descriptions and such is one of them. We heard reclassification. There's lots of work to be done, right? And we need humans and administrators to help us do that work. But yeah, this would be one of those just on the books, but not an open position or a vacant position. It's just.
Thank you.
I like the way you said humans and administrators.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
I was just going to make a piggyback on Mr. Campbell's comments, and this has been around for decades. I came up here in 1983 on a one-year grant, knowing that after that 1 year, that I could possibly be out of a job and be out looking again. And that was back when you'd have a couple hundred people looking for that one job opening. So, yeah, just a chance you take, and as long as we're transparent and the people are cognizant of what they're getting into with those possibilities, I've got no problem with it.
Well, I think Mr. Ald spoke appropriately that, we do have people that retire in administrative positions, and those positions need to be filled. So it's not like there's not opportunity to move onward and be continuous. Any other questions or comments on this specific item? The number 5, authorization of new management position, Director of Elementary Education. Any members of the public or staff want to comment? If you'd like to comment, come up to the microphone, please. Identify yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Kathy McCoy, Pierce teacher and data vice president. As I'm listening to this, I just had a few thoughts that went through my head. As far as the grant money, that's fantastic, but should we decide this is something we need to keep and there is no more grant money, I'm thinking in my head, money is limited and we're already short teachers and we're already doing emergency credentials. Recruiting from our ranks is fantastic, but that also takes experienced teachers out of the classroom, and we're having trouble filling positions as it is. Also, sometimes there's not money for bargaining, and I'm thinking ahead where there may be lean times, and should we have these positions, and then we're told we don't have money, but we're funding these new positions, that's something to consider. Finally, you guys are looking like from the top down, and I'm kind of looking from the bottom up, and sometimes what we think may be working from one side or the other side may be saying that's not working. So I hope there will be consultation and kind of talks about, Do you see a difference? Do you see a change? Is this something that is helpful? Because sometimes, through no one's fault, that may not happen. And I'm thinking this may be something we may not see a difference in for several years because it takes a long time for those things to start to be effective. So I just hope those are things that have been considered. And, as a teacher, like I want to see those classrooms, that have teachers in them and not be told we have to be, have over what our numbers, recommended numbers are, because we know that that is what helps students succeed, because now we're using our money in other ways. So as a teacher, I hope those are things that have been considered. Thank you.
Appreciate those points, very well taken. Any other questions, comments from members of the public? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 6, authorization for new management position, Director, Coordinator of Secondary Education.
So I think we've covered a lot of the background information. Obviously, in a unified school district, when you have an elementary director, you need to have a secondary. So this is that position's counterpart. As I mentioned, we decided to have it be either a director or coordinator because it's a different level of responsibility and therefore the qualifications differ. There are more extensive qualifications to be a director as far as administrative experience, degrees, and so forth. Whereas if there is an applicant that we feel strongly could be successful, but it does not have those as rigorous of requirements, then a coordinator would be, a flexible response for us. And so that is why you see that hyphen, is because we want to have options. And so other than that, under the direction of the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, this person will assume all the duties that the elementary will, only for secondary, and that includes the state and federal responsibilities. And so that's why this particular one will also have some funding come from ongoing federal grants.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members?
No, the only thing
Go ahead,
so-
Robert.
So basically, what's happening here, like you said, is these two positions, we're going to be funded no matter what, whether if it runs out of the grant, we still have money coming in for this one, correctly?
Yeah, it's not fully funded, but it's a significant amount of it.
Yeah.
It can be allocated to the implementation of all the titles.
Okay. We don't know exactly about what percentage that is, do we?
Well, and it fluctuates from year to year, so, they're threatening to change our federal allocations of
Right.
Title I, Title II. So it's a portion of those funds go this way. If secondary does CTE, there can be, so there's a variance, and it's what we choose to, but you can't really call it because it adjusts year to year.
Okay.
And there would be no requirement for us to keep it, so right now, those two positions are the assistant sup of, we're changing the department to be educational services, name versus curriculum instruction. The same person, right? We have an assistant superintendent and we have a coordinator. They both have blended or braided funding, means they're part federal, part state funding. And that's what we're doing. We're taking the same money and spreading it across, but we're filling in the gaps with the one-time funding that we're talking about right now. And so when that ends, we may, instead of spreading it over 3 positions, it may go back to 2. We can accordion that based on what those allocations look like going forward.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I think that, much of our previous discussion covered the same concerns and areas of focus here, but I do think I just want to call this one out specifically to our report earlier, because I think it specifically addresses those kinds of needs that we have, that we need to have some extra attention paid to right now, so that we can turn that graph around and invert that. So I wholeheartedly support this. Any questions or comments from members of the public? I think before I call for the vote, I also wanted to comment. I do think it is important, as was mentioned earlier, that when we evaluate the success of a position, we do it as an organization. That includes the entire organization of what benefits not just teachers, not just administrators, but the whole organization with the focus on what benefits students. So did you want to comment also on this?
Hi, Brandy Kean. I just have a question, because this would be like a new position, correct? We don't currently have that. With some of the same language as elementary, I'm just hoping that this position would include working with Saracoso, dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, and really kind of, as we were looking at the LCAP, if we were doing that, we might be able to raise those numbers, and then also the college and career path,
Readiness.
CTE. Yeah, the pathway. So I'm just wondering, in this new position, is that a focus to help enhance the experience at the high school?
Yeah,
is that
so-
part of the job description? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it encompasses every part of secondary education from 6 through 12 currently. But yes, it would be, I'm sorry, I've got my back to you.
No, it's good. I
Nothing
got you,
can
Brad.
do. But it would be addressing, CTE, specifically instructional pathways, A through G. At the high school, we have our WASC accreditation. They would need to be supportive of that, so, yes.
And then specifically to some of the ones you called out, college and career readiness indicators, the state has multiple ways that they assess and define that, and that would be a factor and a focus area for this person, which includes specific pathways on dual enrollment and on CTE. So on those specific questions, yes, there are 7 pathways that our district, 6 of the pathways our district currently offers. Pathways that our students can show the state that they're college and career ready upon graduation, and that would absolutely be an element of this person's responsibility.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the question because it really got specific about my general comment that I just made, because that's exactly what I was saying. That we've seen the report tonight that says we need to focus on this, and you spelled them out specifically rather than just the general terms in which I did. If there are no other comments or questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 7, authorization of new management position, Director, Coordinator of Human Resources. Mr. Auld.
So same background, except for this one is not funded by the title. This is fully funded by the grant. Under the supervision of the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, the Director or Coordinator of Human Resources is responsible for the administration of the day-to-day operation of the Human Resources Office. Responsibilities will include, but are not limited to, recruitment, candidate testing, interviewing, selection, and hiring of certificated and classified employees. The Director/Coordinator plans, organizes, and coordinates human resource activities for certificated and classified employees. The financial implications, the Director of Human Resources will be assigned as a Class 3 on the management schedule, and if it is a coordinator, that will be assigned as a Class 4. This position will be funded by the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Discretionary Block Grant, and therefore will not impact the general fund. And I should also indicate we will continue to be able to support our music programs with the Prop 28 funding, and so this will not impact that either. It is recommended that the board approve the new management position of Director, Coordinator of Human Resources as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? I would just like to say that I am hopeful that this does exactly what was questioned by the teachers earlier. Yes, we're having a difficult time filling positions, and I believe if it's critical that you need the help in your department for us to be able to find creative ways and to be able to get out and really get the positions filled we need. And I think this is a great focus area, and we should be able to see in pretty short order whether it's paying off for us. So I am very hopeful that we can get to that place where we have the appropriate number of teachers in the classroom and paras that we need and the bus drivers we need. And so I strongly support this position as well. And I think, I appreciate your calling out the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Discretionary Block Grant, because although the title says Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Discretionary Block Grant, that grant was clearly designed with a very broad ability to use the dollars in almost whatever way we want to. And since Prop 28 had passed, and we had previously planned to spend a lot of that money on arts and music, we were able to shift that focus, and that gives us some flexibility we did not already have. So I appreciate that calling out on that. Any other questions or comments from members of the public? Kurt?
Yeah, I think, you hit on part of what I was thinking, but, in this day and age and in the state of California, the needs, the load on human resources is ratcheting up every year. And, the thought that, the department as it is currently constituted could possibly keep up with everything that needs to happen, not only the recruitment and retention piece that's so critical, but there's, all kinds of investigations that has to happen, and, everybody's trying to sue somebody for something, and it's just a, never-ending, heap of stuff that just keeps piling up higher and higher. So having, somebody in this role is very, very critical for us at this time. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Any questions or comments from members of the public or staff? All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 8, authorization of new classified management position, Director of Facilities.
So this one, or these last two, are actually a little bit different, so I'll give some background information to call out the differences. So under the direction of the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services in cooperation with other district administrators, the Director of Facilities oversees the development and implementation of the district's long-term facilities master plan and implements and supervises the planning, construction, and modernization of capital improvement projects. I wanted to call out the fact we currently have a position, Director of Construction. Mr. Coit holds that position, and he will continue to hold that position until which time he retires, which is looming. We're not entirely sure. It could be within the next 6 to 18 months. When he retires, we will not fill the Director of Construction position, but the Director of Facilities will continue, and as we know, we're going through a major shift. So it's going to be critically important that we have somebody with the knowledge and the skill set to help us see that through with all of the different changes that are imminent. And so this position will be Class 4. It currently is, the Director of Construction is currently Class 4 on the management salary schedule, so that's not changing. And this position is also funded by the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Discretionary Block Grant, and therefore will not impact the general fund. It is recommended that the board approve the new classified management position, Director of Facilities, as presented.
Move the recommended action.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? I think one of the things that hasn't come up in the discussion so far that I might like to highlight is we've talked about keeping an eye on these positions, about whether they're benefiting us in the way we need to. I think there are elements of some of these positions, though, that also are critically important for where we are right now, sometimes because of programs we've got going on and we're just instituting, sometimes because of pent-up demand. And so I think some of these positions we may be able to reevaluate and say, yes, they were successful. Yes, they contributed to us greatly, but we don't need it anymore. And so I think that's another option that we have as we review these, as we go on in the future, that we're, as you've identified, with our facilities changes coming up on the horizon, there's a huge load. Depending on what the community does, 5, 6, 10 years from now, we may have all the facilities that we need to introduce, and all we need to do is maintain, and it may be a different role necessary. And I think the same way with, we've got some pent-up need in human resources with all the introductions of new things that fall into that category. We've got, demand on the academic and educational services. But as we approach and whittle some of those down, we may find we've gained some ground and, don't need those positions. So I think, to me, an important key of this whole thing is that we keep a good close eye on, we all know that the amount of dollars we get for education isn't enough. And I don't think that's going to change in the near future. It hasn't changed in almost 40 years that I've been doing this job. So we need to spend wisely. And so that's a continual important look. Any other questions or comments from board members?
Well, I also think that with new schools coming in and realignment of where we're gonna put kids, that's gonna be a huge situation that's coming up, and I think this will probably help address some of those situations with how we go through that political process. So,
Any other questions or comments from board members? Any other questions or comments from members of the public or staff? All in favor say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 9, authorization of new certificated position, coordinator of community schools.
So the California legislature appropriated almost $3 billion for the California Community Schools Partnership Program to support and expand community schools until June 30, 2028. Sierra Sands received a $200,000 California Community Schools Partnership Program planning grant from the California Department of Education for the 2023-24 through the 2024-25 school year. SSUSD will be applying for the Community Schools Partnership Grant Implementation Grant. So there's two different grants. There's the first grant, which is the planning grant, and in the planning grant is the funding for the first year to compensate the coordinator. And then this one would require us being successful in being awarded the grant each subsequent year to maintain this particular program. We anticipate this grant to be a multi-million-dollar grant. In order to be eligible for implementation, we must have a community schools support coordinator. The financial implications: the community schools support coordinator position will be funded through May 2025 with funds from the California Community School Partnership. This position will be placed at as a class 4 on the management salary schedule. It's recommended that the board approve the community schools support coordinator position as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? I guess I would like to comment that this one, I think, is quite a bit different than the others we've been talking about, and we need to make sure we understand that as a board. This in a way creates an opportunity to provide different services that we are not currently offering to students. And there's a lot of evolution going on in what schools are becoming, and to identify these potential sources of income and these potential sources of responsibility is important. And I think as we move forward, we need to move forward wisely, considering that human element is talked about before, about what kids need, how can we provide it for them, how can we access other services that our community offers for those kids and coordinate those services, and do it in a way that does not negatively impact our classroom services. So I, again, wholeheartedly support this for totally different reasons than the other recommendations. Any other questions or comments from board members? Any questions or comments from members of the public or staff? All in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Brian. Moves us to general administration. Report on the 22-23 Burroughs High School Civil Rights Review finding. Dr. Savko.
So in the 2022-23 school year, California Department of Education, Office of Equal Opportunity, selected Burroughs High School for a civil rights compliance review. Our high school was selected for a review based on the OEO's targeting plan, which feels targeted, which requires a review of sub-recipients with the highest disparities between their total enrollment and CTE enrollment on the basis of race, sex, and disability. The BHS CTE program was selected due to the 21-22 sex enrollment data. As a part of the selection of the Civil Rights Review, we had a year-long extensive program review and then a site visit, which was completed in March 2023. I just want to let the board know that this is for informational purposes only. You don't have to take any action. The review instrument itself was 48 pages long and 24 sections long. And I just want to give you a sample of what a section could require in terms of evidence upload. One evidence request could include a dozen or up to 24 pieces of evidence to upload into this system. I want to commend our maintenance department, Shane Herbert, Carrie Cope, and Chris Osterman, who had to do an extensive measurement of toilet handles to every toilet on that campus. Measuring disabled parking spots, literal ramp degrees, rise over run. It was extensive, so it went from facilities to programs to personnel. And so there was a great collaboration between many departments to go through this extensive program review. I share all of that to provide context that we had only 9 findings. None of them were program related. They were related to water faucets and mirror placement in bathrooms, etc. So I just want to say this is a huge celebration. Many districts don't have that, I would say, extensive level of compliance. So we want to celebrate that, that we are doing great work for our students. And yes, we did have 9 findings that are articulated in that attachment. So the now what piece is, we just recently, almost a year later, received our letter of findings. And so the attachment articulates what the finding was and what the required corrective action is. And so we are working with Shane Herbert to address those repairs, or whatever is needed to address those issues. The funding source would be the deferred maintenance budget. And I just thought you might want to know and celebrate that we survived and thrived amidst an year-long civil rights review of our CTE program. Yay. Yay.
Okay, any questions, comments from board members? So,
How often do we get picked for this?
It has to do with our data.
Yeah, it has to do
So
with our
when we
data.
have disparity or disproportionality, then we get flagged, so.
but there were no findings that related to anything that creates disparity or.
Correct. That's the irony of it all, right? So we really worked well together. I do want to share this little anecdote. I know it's late, but Chris Osterman went to Europe right after this, after he survived this review, and he took pictures of ramps and walkways. And he was obsessed with, this would never pass a civil rights review, and I want you to see this. So, Chris, I'm thinking of you.
So I'm thinking that, we saw those big dips in CTE performance. Maybe if we had lowered some mirrors, we would have had some increases in.
Well, I'm not sure I can support that theory with evidence, but I will accept it.
So I guess the reason I asked the question is if the review is motivated by this ratio, what do we do to change the ratio so we don't spend so much time on this kind of investigation when we've already identified today all these other areas, we need to be spending time on behalf of our students.
I think our maintenance guys will help us.
No.
correct them.
That will correct those.
No, they'll help us, they'll start beating on people to correct the data collection deficiencies.
Perhaps. So that's a great question. So the instrument was very helpful in self-identification of where we could improve our practices to prevent disparity
Okay.
in enrollment. So, so our response was being much more intentional about the recruitment of students to the CTE pathways, so we could balance out the male to female ratio in our programs. And so we worked with our counseling department and also updated our recruitment materials and even our recruitment materials for personnel into the pathways.
Beautiful. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
So maybe we can give an example. I'm just going to pull a hypothetical that's probably not related here, but if you look at maybe historical stereotypes, if there's a welding class, you might see only boys in there. Like there's a historical stereotypes, right? And so we're wanting to see more diversification of students of all types and groups in any of these things. And then the flip side is a historical in an education pathway. In early education, you might see more female students. And those are the types of disparities that they're looking at is are we providing access to all student groups? And the only way they see the evidence is who's in the class. Now, whether or not they like it or not, right? So we have to recruit, we have to be creative and make it really appealing to all student groups so that we don't have a dynamic disparity.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for the report. Brings us to item 2, approval of the 24, 20 through 27 board goals. Dr. Moore.
Yes, I am excited to share this as a draft that we can certainly discuss and revise and or delay down the road if we want to get it right. But I'll just remind us that every 3 years, our board updates the goals that guide us for the next 3 years. And so at our workshop on December 8th, we worked with some language. We kind of confirmed at that time the 5 categories would continue with some nuance. So we have 5 goals right now. They're the ones on the screen that we've seen for a long time. And then 4 of those make it into our LCAP because our current goal 5, which is facilities, isn't necessarily a match to the needs of our LCAP, but it's still a district goal. So we played with language, and then we also had taken this same conversation to our local control accountability plan advisory committee, and they helped us play with language, came up with a lot of varieties, and that's what you all looked at and helped us to prioritize and identify which ones were resonating. And so from that workshop, we played with and came up with this version that we have in front of us. This is a proposal that we can still wordsmith, and when we feel like it's ready as a board governance team, you can take action to approve it and confirm it as its final status for the next 3 years, but offering this document for consideration and discussion. And I can read the categories if you like, but I know we have it on our screens as well.
So I would like to open the floor then for discussion, board members, of what they see in front of them and what kind of comments they have or input. Anyone have anything they'd like to comment on? Go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I do. So I think by and large, I like what's here. I think there are some nuances that I think there's probably a way that we could strengthen them a little bit. Do we want to wordsmith here?
Not tonight.
Or do we want to say that we need to do a little wordsmithing?
I think the answer to your question is on the clock.
Yeah, well, so then if we're not going to wordsmith here, then we should probably agree on a process for how we're going to go about that.
Okay. So any other comments or responses to Kurt's comment? I guess one thing I would like to say is, in general, I also like there are a lot of things about these and the way they are spelled out that I like a lot.
Yep.
In item 1 about the academic program, I really like the way we have not just identified the quote college to career readiness, but broadened it in a much more creative way that helps us understand as we move into the future, we have got to find a way to engage young people and help them find the way they meet what they are aspiring to, or maybe even just inspire them to create aspirations in them. And the engagement piece, I think, is really critical. We just know by looking at what we're doing, so many times we miss the mark just because we can't engage the student. The building of community and family engagement, I think, is also critical if we're going to be successful. And I think the identification of instruction and leadership we've talked about tonight in so many different ways, that's a whole package. And having the right team, and leadership doesn't just mean administration. We all have a role in leadership. And then clearly, we have a pretty big roadmap in front of us right now about improving facilities, and identifying that as a key focus, I think, is critical. So, for me, I don't know how much wordsmithing we need to do. If the board, the majority of the board feels like we need to wordsmith it, then we need to, as Kurt says, we need to identify a time and a place to do that can be more effective than trying to do it in this kind of workshop circumstance. For me, I'm okay with it the way it is. Can we hear from others? Mike?
And I'm okay. I don't want to set up another meeting to wordsmith or fine tune to change a word. I mean, if the goal meets what we what we intended, I'm fine. But if it doesn't meet that, then we need to set up another time to get down and sit down and change the entire goal. But to go change one word because one word might sound a little bit better, I'm not for that.
Yeah, and that's not where I was going, but I also don't know that my thoughts are significant enough where we need to have, a workshop and go spend hours doing this again. Maybe if I'm the only one that's got some thoughts on things that I think could be strengthened, I'm happy to share them, and maybe you guys can talk me down and we'll be good to go.
Or just overrule you.
What's that?
Or just overrule you.
That's fine too. I mean, this is a board. I'm only one, right? So that works. But
is everybody else good with that process? Does anybody else have any specific concerns or significant concerns?
I like the way they are.
Okay, so speak.
Yeah, so on number one, my concern was I'm good up until to me, it kind of fizzles out towards the end. It's, so we want to provide a program that supports opportunities for all students to pursue their aspirations. I think that we need to help our students understand what their aspirations are. I know when I got out of high school, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. I think there's a lot of kids that do, but I think that you just don't have the life experience and the education and the exposure to, the breadth of things that are available out there in the world to be able to really have an aspiration that you can go after and attack. So I'm not sure what the words I would use are, but maybe something like, for all students to, maybe explore and pursue their applications or their aspirations or something like that. I mean, something that helps us focus on the fact that we need to, make sure that the world of opportunities that are out there are made known to our students so that they can aspire to something that is real.
I'll add a perspective, and we don't have to belabor this, but I guess in my mind, if a student is able to pursue it, that's a much higher level than understand it, so then to me it's implied that part of the opportunities and preparedness that we've done is the exploration. So, when we look at standards, understand is a different level than doing and applying the learning. And so I guess that's how I'm seeing the language, is that yes, and that might be included.
Yeah, and I had thought exactly of that as well. And, you know, I just think that the amount of time and energy we put into that exploration process is just, it's not there. So if we don't put a lot of energy into that, then they may be able to pursue their aspirations, but their aspirations may be out of alignment with what reality is and where they really, at the end, would like to go if we had prepared them to pursue that aspiration rather than that one.
So,
Right.
so could I ask a question here? Because I think in the end, while sometimes there's verbiage that is very critical that we get the specific word, I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, does the language here cover what you're trying to express, or would we do something differently if we changed a word? Because I think in response to what Dr. Moore was talking about, the preparedness for all students to pursue their aspirations, the preparedness could very well include the understanding
Sure.
and the.
No, it does.
Yeah.
It does, but
So
it's
is there
all,
a better
but,
word-
but
are
I
there
think
better
it's,
words to-
but it,
to
yeah,
achieve
but
that?
it's a critical piece that I don't think we do that much, right?
But is it here?
We,
If
We
it's here in
just
the
added
goal-
a director of secondary education to help us do it.
well, and that's good. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I can be talked off the edge, off the ledge, you know, it's fine. I mean, I won't argue that, well, I'm not supporting it if we leave it like this, right?
I
So
agree.
my only thought was, this is a thing that I think is key to where we go in the future that I don't think is addressed in the goal as written. That's all. So,
So do you not think preparedness for all students for your screen to go blank, to pursue their aspirations
no, because
covers
I
that?
think we're trying to prepare our students now very well for the aspirations that they have. But I don't think we do a good job of helping them aspire to do things that they're not thinking of right now. I don't think we're throwing those opportunities out there to them. I don't think they know, right? So that's kind of the key piece that's missing. Yes, oh, by the way, yeah, we certainly, they need to do some level of exploration to be able to know what they aspire to, but they're doing that now. And if we don't do anything different, they're still doing that now.
So is there an assertion or an insertion of a word or an insertion of a concept that you think you can add to this to achieve what you're
Well, I think
addressing?
if you said to explore and pursue their aspirations, maybe that's a, you know, and there may be a better way to say it. But, I mean, just, I think we need to do
I'm okay with
a lot
that.
more
Anybody
of
have any?
that.
It doesn't,
Is that-
it doesn't change the goal. It just.
No.
it's doing this, yeah.
No, and I
But
don't-
it's
yeah, I
just
don't think-
elaborating on, so I've got no problem. with it.
If any,
It's more of a, calling, you know, basically shining a light on a piece of this process that I don't think we shine enough of a light on now. So,
is everybody okay with that change? Okay, and then were there others that,
let's see. No, I think the rest were, well, in number 4, I think you need a comma after high quality. Well, I thought when you had multiple adjectives in front of a, never mind. I'm not going to get in an argument with an educational professional over what I thought the rules were. Yeah, I thought, something about the way and build leadership capacity on the end, it seemed a little awkward. I didn't, but that's wordsmithing. I'm not going to go there any further. And I think, you know, the way we have articulated number 5, I mean, given where we are today and where we're going over the next 6 to 12 months and, you know, all of that, I think that terminology is probably makes a lot of sense now. I'm not sure, hopefully, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, it'll be less applicable to where we are in the grand scheme of things. But you know, because then I think assuming things go the way we want them to go over the next 12 months, at that point, I think that this goal is probably not as effective as something that went a little broader.
And I would argue that if past history is any indicator, I would love to be where we need to be in 12 months, but we won't be.
Well, so anyway, I'm okay beyond that. So thank you for indulging me.
So the edits are adding explore and to number 1 and a comma after quality in number 4.
Okay.
Well, I'm not,
Then-
so I don't know why Eileen had to leave before we had this conversation because she could help us out. What about Michelle? Should there be a comma after high quality?
Okay, we're going to, I would entertain a motion to adopt as amended.
Second.
No,
And no one's motion?
Then
So
I will,
moved.
I will.
So moved.
All right,
Is
it's been
that
moved
where you want it
to
to go?
adopt as amended. Is there a second? Second. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any questions or comments from members of the public and staff who are silly enough to still be here or required to be here? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. An important accomplishment. Item 3, approval of gifts to the district. Mr. Rockwell.
The following gift was received. DCS Corporation made a donation of paper with an estimated cash value of $500 to be used throughout the district. Donations provide support to the district and have a positive financial impact. I move we accept the gift as described and send an appropriate letter of appreciation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 4, discussion of possible action on board member travel to attend the CSBA and ACSA Coast to Coast Federal Advocacy event in Washington, D.C. Dr. Moore.
So this is, our board has approved up to 2 board members to go to this, and we've just had a change of availability. So without knowing who would like to go, the recommendation was to come to have a discussion. I believe that it's the remaining 2 folks that need to weigh in if you would like to go would be Mr. Ferris and Mr. Scott, as Mr. Rockwell is attending, and neither Mr. Campbell nor Mrs. Campbell are able to attend. So,
Mr. Scott, do you
discussion.
have desire or availability to go to Coast to Coast?
I would possibly be available. I'd have to double check my calendar.
Okay.
I would defer to you if you want to go.
I am
You're more than
available,
welcome.
and I'm
Then
certainly
it's-
willing and ready to go if that's what you'd like to.
It's all yours, sir.
Okay. If something changes, I will tag you.
'Cause you'll have to go with Mr. Rockwell. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah, I'll figure out a way to avoid him as much as possible. Okay, so I have a willingness to go. Does the board okay with allowing me to take that position?
I'd much rather go with you than Mr. Scott.
I'll take that as a motion.
I move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? It is unanimous. That moves us to construction administration. Item 1 has been pulled. We move to item 2, approval of an agreement with Braun Electric Company Incorporated for low voltage for the Richmond Elementary School replacement project. Ms. Smith.
So we brought this one to the board previously. We had to withdraw it because we had some qualification issues. We rebid it, and Braun was selected as the lowest bidder on this particular component of the Richmond project. So it is recommended that you approve the agreement with Braun Electric Company for low voltage for that project.
Move recommended action.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Mr. Scott.
This is one of the bids where it was nice to see that you had companies that were that close to each other, which to me means people were putting in competitive bids. So it's just nice to see that for once.
Yeah, and I'll add, this is kind of my world these days. Not that I'm an expert, but I've learned a lot about low voltage
And
and
where comments
construction
go.
projects. And, you know, when I first saw the number, I thought, holy cow. And then I got to thinking, yeah, no, the size of the job, you know, seems relatively reasonable. So I'm okay with it.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to business administration. 11.1, approval of California Department of Education Form J-13A for district-wide closure of all school sites.
So if you recall, in August, we had a tropical storm, Hillary, and at that time, it was unclear exactly what the conditions would be on Monday, August 21st. The city of Ridgecrest had announced a state of emergency, and so in an abundance of caution, the district decided to close our schools on Monday so we could assess damage and make sure that transportation could be safely made. Ed Code 41422 and 46392 allow us to basically receive instructional time credit when we lose minutes due to an emergency closure. And the process for doing that is this J13 process. So with this form, we will be able to recover, we will receive credit for the days and minutes that were lost due to that emergency closure in August.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments, members of the board? Questions or comments, members of the public?
Thank you for clarifying that this was Hillary related, because it
Wasn't in there, I saw that.
wasn't quite as clear. So, appreciate that.
Any
And
questions?
I actually, if I was just not really thinking about this and I read that header, it would sort of make me panic,
Oh.
right? Approval of a form to close all school sites. That's not what it's for.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to, let's see,
11.2.
approval of agreement with Kern County Public Health Waste Hunger Not Food Program for Food Recovery.
So what this is we actually piloted a partnership with Salvation Army locally, where when there is any edible food left after meals or food that will expire, so for example, if we have milk available and we're not going to consume it before it expires, we can donate that to the agency and then they can distribute it to people who need it. As of January 2024, SB 1383 makes this process mandatory for school districts. And so we now have to establish this contract and have the formal agreement in place and specify how we'll be operating the food recovery program with the Salvation Army, who's the local agency that administers this for Kern County Public Health. And so this attached agreement is the agreement that we should put in place to formalize that process.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members?
No, thank you.
Any
It's always
questions?
nice to see food not go to waste.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. There's nothing under technology administration, so we move to item 13, where we'll temporarily adjourn the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education to conduct the meeting of the Kern Schools Financing Authority Board of Directors. The only item on that agenda, I believe, is the approval of the minutes, so if there are no corrections, today will stand as approved, and we will adjourn the meeting of the Kern Schools Financing Authority and reconvene the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education to move to the consent calendar.
Move the entire consent calendar.
I have a motion for the entire consent calendar. Any questions or comments on those items? Any questions or comments from the public on those items? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. That brings us to future agenda items. Are there any requests for future agenda items?
Yeah, I was wondering, you know, there's a lot of people here that probably are ready to go home. And the ability to move the meetings to start at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock, is that something that we could investigate, possibility for school board meetings?
There could certainly be a discussion to that
Yeah.
as a future agenda item. Does the board, is there a consensus that we would like to entertain that concept and have a discussion?
Sure.
Okay. That can be done.
I just think that we got a lot of people that have.
You don't have to lobby for the decision.
Oh, okay.
You're going to get your day in court later. Okay, that brings us to adjournment. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be February 15th of this year. Thank you for coming and spending your evening with us.